welcome to another Hail Yes, a live edition of our Michigan football and basketball podcast here at the Detroit Free Press. I am Andrew Burkle, of course, joined by our Michigan beat writer, Tony Garcia, who had a very busy week last week, first traveling to West Lafayette, then traveling to Washington, D.C. for an epic game against Duke. So, Tony, how was the week, man? I mean, it's pretty crazy going back and forth, right?
Yeah, second week in a row with a couple road trips, right? I guess the game in Ohio State was technically on the Sunday before, but it was Columbus, Evanston, West Lafayette, D.C. Feels like Michigan's not the only one getting their preparation in for March right now, but it was awesome. It was awesome. It was a great week. 2 high-level matchups, 2 unbelievable environments. Mackey, that might be the loudest arena I've ever been in, like that night specifically. I've been to Mackey before and it's been crazy. Seen a number of really wild games at Breslin. State Farm Center in Illinois is awesome. Assembly Hall gets rocking in Indiana. Like we've been saying, Michigan's best is better than other teams' best this year. Mackey's best is better than anybody else's best. I mean, maybe you could talk Allen Fieldhouse at Kansas or maybe Cameron Indoor. Fortunately, Michigan didn't have to play there against Duke, but I think, Mackey is just unbelievable. And then the vibes in DC this weekend were electric. Had a bunch of friends who happened to be in town. So, and they didn't open the doors for a 6:30 game until 5 o'clock for media. So normally I like to get there at least 2 hours early, especially for one of these games. And so I had time to kill. Of course, I was being responsible, but went to a bar with some friends while they were pre-gaming and enjoying the festivities. This place was filling up. Everybody had Michigan or Duke gear on. Early, it felt like 70-30 split there, Michigan, but then more Duke fans started filing in. And I'd say in the arena, it was complete 50-50. It was hard to differentiate. Like both teams like the let's go chant, and one says let's go Duke and one says let's go blue. And they were kind of fighting it out, and it was really a wash. So that was a great game. Obviously, Michigan did not get the results it wanted, but I think later we'll talk about how it was not the worst thing in the world for them. But yeah, 1-1 on the week. If you knew going into the week that you were going to go 1-1, they won the one that is good to win, and they lost the one that is not as difficult or not as painful to lose in many respects. So awesome week, fun week, and more exciting ball coming up this week.
Yeah. So you kind of mentioned it. Michigan took care of business in the Big Ten, beating Purdue. They now have a 3-game lead in the conference thanks to UCLA knocking off Illinois. That's another huge one for Michigan as far as growing that gap. So now we have Illinois, Michigan State, Nebraska, and Purdue all have 4 losses. So Michigan can clinch the Big Ten by winning, or at least a share of the Big Ten by winning on Tuesday against Minnesota, which is why we wanted to go live today, get 2 guys before that kind of changes the story and we don't get time to talk about what was an awesome week with the Duke and Purdue games. So before we look forward, let's look back. And I don't know how we don't start with the Duke-Michigan game when it's number 1 versus number 3. Coach's poll just came out, by the way. Michigan dropped a couple spots to number 3, but everyone still knows.
They're flipping spot.
Yeah, these are 2 of the 3 best teams in the country, I think, pretty clearly. Arizona had an impressive win over the weekend at Houston, so they're certainly in that mix as well. But with these 2 teams face off with just like under a month to go until March Madness, what ultimately went wrong for Michigan, if you had to sum it up in like just simply put, why did Duke win this game and not Michigan?
A lot went wrong, I would say, for Michigan. Number one, the top thing for me was Michigan getting out-rebounded, and not just by a small margin, by a big margin, 41-28. So during their 11-game winning streak, Michigan had won the battle of the boards in 10 of those games, and the other one they tied, and that was Michigan State. And rebounding is what Michigan State does best. So in my estimation, if you are holding serve against another team's greatest strength, that is a de facto win. And so they essentially won the boards in every game, and they were controlling. In my estimation, that's like setting the tone physically. That means, there have been many games where Adai and Yaxel and Mraz have all had somewhere between 7 and 12 boards. There are the occasional games. It means you have guards crashing. It means you have wings like coming in to sort of help out and clean things up when the big 3 aren't handling it. And that just really wasn't on display on this one. And Dusty was talking about it after the game. Duke was just quicker to the 50-50 balls. I am not a big subscriber of, they just wanted it more. That's not true. It's not like one team wants to win and one team's like, oh, whatever.
It can be, you can see examples of it, but most of the time it's a silly narrative.
Well, no, certainly there are. Like for instance, in a couple weeks, if Michigan hasn't lost again, and I guess maybe MSU, that's a bad example because they're always going to show up for that game. But say you're 18-1 in the league, you've got the 1 seed wrapped up, nothing left to play for, and then you're playing like a bubble type team or something, right? And there's just that desperation, like hungry dogs run faster. That I agree with, but that was narrative in my estimation in this one. And then beyond that, this game was played at the pace that Duke wanted. 62 total possessions in this game. That's the fewest in a Michigan game this year. Back to the boards. Michigan, they weren't getting offensive rebounds, right? Like I think until the possession late where Yaxel, and I can't remember if it was Adai or Merez, forgive me, who also got an offensive board on the same possession. And then they kicked it out to Cadeau, who swung it to Yaxel. He hit the 3 to make it 57-56 from the right wing. They got 2 offensive boards on that possession. And then I think they got 1 or 2 more late. They got like 4 of their 6 offensive rebounds in the second half in the final 5 minutes.
And that's the desperation you were talking about earlier, right? Like when you're down all of a sudden, in a close game, that's you can't fake desperation, right? So there is some truth to it, right?
That's right. And then, shooting poorly, 6 of 25 from 3. That was their worst shooting game in a month. And then not capitalizing on moments where they had a chance. Duke had 11 turnovers and Michigan got 7 points off those 11 turnovers. Michigan actually protected the ball very well. They only had 7 turnovers, but Duke got 9 points off those turnovers, right? So, it's just every little thing. Then Adai's foul trouble in the first half. 3 fouls in 6 minutes. That renders like one of Michigan's greatest strengths sort of moot at that point when they can't use their size. And then Dusty talked about sort of the snowball effect that had in the second half. They're like, well, we're trying to keep all these guys on the court. Like we need our minutes with these guys there in order to be at our best. But Adai's not really built or hasn't frequently played 16 plus minutes and a half. Adai played 16. Merez played 17. Yaxel played 20. Cadeau played 16 in the second half, right? So there just wasn't that same rotation that you're used to seeing, where Michigan can just keep the fresh bodies coming off a turnstile. And Duke's big, they're physical. I think they wore them down a little bit late, and we've seen it the other way, right? Like the Michigan State Michigan game. Obviously, the disparity was nowhere near as much, but it just takes so much effort to come back against a big physical team that by the time you get there, sometimes you're out of juice, right? Duke goes up 8. With 6 minutes left, or 5:51, I think it was. Michigan rips off that 7-0 run. That was their best run of the whole game, but it was just hard to score frequently, time and time again against Duke, which is one of the best defenses in the country. They ran a bunch of really good design plays, certainly out of the timeout. The lob from Gongba to Evans was a masterclass. Boozer's the national player of the year, right? He hits a big time 3 from the corner. Then I think the next play is the floater, right? Where Adai got called for the goaltend. I don't know about that one. We were on, I had a good angle of it, but it's not like I got to see a replay, right? And so, it looked right near the peak, right? Like either it's at the top of its apex or it's just coming down. It to me, it didn't look like it was still going up. You can get it at the top of its apex and it's not a goaltend. It was right in that gray area. And obviously that's a big call. But then later, Michigan's down 3, final minute. They need a stop and a board to stay in it, and tail of the tape. Duke gets another offensive rebound. Then Michigan doesn't foul. Caleb Foster, who's like a 58% free throw shooter, he's dribbling around for like 10 seconds. They get the ball to Isaiah Evans, who's almost a 90% free throw shooter. So they've got 10 or 12 or 14 seconds, whatever it was, come off the clock. They didn't foul the better guy. It felt like a real snowball effect there as well. So just a lot went wrong on this day.
Yeah. And ultimately what you're kind of saying is execution to a certain degree, right? Where, and there's some easy adjustments, right? Like you mentioned how many minutes Cadeau, Mara, Johnson, and Yaxel all played. Well, Michigan's depth, we've talked about all year long being a strength. I wonder if they look back and be like, yeah, it's easy to say like, well, how do we take Yaxel out? How do we take Adai out? How do we take Merez? How do we take Cadeau out? But like some of these guys like Kaysen and McKinney and, Cheddar to a certain degree, and of course Burnett as well. Like these guys all have earned their opportunities throughout the year. And I think that the strength in numbers has been Michigan's biggest strength this year in a lot of games. The other thing, pointing to the execution, Michigan hasn't played a lot of close games this year. They really haven't. I don't think Duke has played an abundance of them either, but it seemed like they were more comfortable in the close game down the stretch, particularly Boozer, who, we just to think about the similar competition, he played at MSU earlier in the year and was terrible in the first half and then completely dominated in the second half. And that was a close game too, like on the road, tough environment. So like they've had some experience in those type of games. Michigan's had a few close games here and there, but really, it's been a lot of games where they win by double digits. And it seemed like that's why you play this game, though, ultimately, right? That's why you said it's not the end of the world. You're still going to be a 1 seed. You're still going to win the Big Ten. In all likelihood, you have 3-game lead with 4 games to play. So ultimately, do you think this experience is going to be something that they're going to look back on and be like, wow, thank God we had that game and got really tested late in the year? Or do you think like that kind of is, as we've talked about in this podcast at times, like spin zone and just like, hey, playing the result as it happens?
I don't think that's spin zone at all. I fully believe that. I mean, just the hoopla around it all day long, right? They're doing game day, they're doing practice or shoot around in front of a crowd. You're in a neutral site. Dusty even talked about, and I didn't take it as an excuse of any sort, but like their travel got a little bit delayed the night before. So you're getting in late, you're turning the page. It's a team you're not as familiar with, right? I mean, there's a lot of this that is very March-like. And so I think that's I think it can only help when you experience something like that. And then also, I think one of my takeaways, and I think there's reason for it. Obviously, that's why I think it. But Michigan, I mean, we just talked about how many things went wrong, right? You don't shoot it well. You don't rebound it well. You don't capitalize on turnovers. You're in foul trouble. You're not executing in a number of ways. And I hate that you and I have talked about this on air, off air, about just like the execution. Well, it's like, well, of course, like, especially, I mean, the previous football staff loved to say that, right? Like, why'd you lose today? We didn't execute. It's like, all right, well, you lost by 2 touchdowns. I mean, where did you not execute? Like, was it tackling? Was it not making adjustments? Was it route depth? Was it bad play calling? Was it the quarterback is a little bit off, the running game? Like, where did you not execute? It all kind of played out in front of us in the various different ways Michigan basketball didn't execute in this one. And yet, for all their troubles and all their faults, this is a 1-point game against maybe the best team in the country in a 50-50 split environment, with 3 minutes and 50 seconds to play, right? And you played badly. So for my estimation, there's I would almost get some confidence in that. It's like, if we play I would say that was Michigan's C- game. Now, Duke gets a lot of credit for that, right? Like, they are big, they are physical. Michigan didn't just randomly do poorly at a lot of things. Duke, as the enemy has a say as well, is what Dusty said today, and it's true. However, I think Michigan did some things worse than it normally does, even beyond just the fact that this was a very difficult matchup. And maybe there's some truth to what you're saying about the Michigan not playing in a bunch of tight games like TCU, Wake Forest. Those were early November. Other than that, I mean,
that's 3 months ago at this point, right?
Nebraska was a tight game that Michigan figured out a way to win down the stretch, and they ended up turning it into a blowout, but they were down 16 with 14 to go at Northwestern. That's not a great team, obviously, and they flipped the switch quickly. But I mean, even the Michigan State game, that was a close game. They were down by 2, 6-7 minutes left. They found a way. I mean, so they have done it. And it's funny. I think maybe that's just kind of our Michigan, following this team perspective, because John Shire, the Duke coach, got a question about that after the game. And he seemed to take exception to it because Duke's loss to North Carolina, right? They had a lead, and then they blew it and they couldn't hold on late. They lost to Texas Tech. That was a 1-point loss, right? And so there's a narrative in Duke land about this team, that team not being able to close out and win the tight game and finish. And so I think that's just how teams feel, right? About when you're watching and you lose, when you're so good and you only lose tight, it's like, oh, and then you're blowing everybody out. It's like, oh man, you can't win the tight game. And it's like, well, sometimes you lose, like that does happen, and you're not going to get blown out because you're so good. So now it looks like you can't win a tight game. And so I just think that's interesting.
Yeah, and we talked about this a ton last year. Remember how we always would talk about how Michigan would play in all these close games, and there was an element of you're leaving it up to chance if you leave it up to these last few minutes. This Michigan team has taken that and just said that's not even going to be a concern anymore. We're not. It might be the opposite. It might be the opposite. We might not have enough close games, right? Because they've been crushing so many people. But like last year, Michigan would play with their food. The next thing you know, it's a 2-point game and they're playing a team that they're better than. And, they'd find a way to win and they'd find a way to win. And most of the time, there were some that went the other way, but this team has not had that problem. And it's just interesting how it can flip year to year. But I do, maybe there is something to it where it's like people are on Duke's case about not winning close games. Well, like you said, they had 2 go against them, and they're in a close one here, and they have the reps and executed slightly higher. But end of the day, we're going to look forward in this one. And ultimately, Michigan's had an incredible season. Like, they're going to end up with 2-3 losses max, most likely, maybe 4 if you count the Big Ten tournament, somewhere in that range. The regular season is a smashing success, right? And as we know, college basketball is a postseason sport. So if this did anything to prepare Michigan for the postseason, and it didn't cost them in the Big Ten, which I still think that teams around the country, fans around the country, put value in winning a Big Ten conference title, an ACC conference title, Big 12, whatever you want, SEC. So all things considered, this season, it's not going to change whether or not this is a successful season, and it's going to help you in the long run. So I don't know how you can't look at this as a learning point and just something that's going to help the team in the long run.
Yeah, Dusty says he expects to, or would be very open to playing this type of game again, right? There's no like, oh, because it didn't go our way, like maybe we won't do that again. Now, in my estimation, it is helpful that Michigan has, and this is all credit to them, such a lead in the Big Ten, right? Like this would be wholly different if, say, Michigan instead of 15-1 was 12-3 or 12-4, right? 13-3 or 12-4, and they got a 1-game lead in the Big Ten. Now you've just gotten like, not that they got hammered, but like you just had a real battle against a physical team, and then you got to try to get right back into the swing of conference play and then outplay an Illinois or a Michigan State, some of those teams who are all bunched together. You've separated, but I don't know if a lot of people thought Michigan was going to win. Michigan was certainly one of the favorites to win the conference, but to wrap it up, seemingly tomorrow, at least a share of it. On February 24th, not many people saw that coming. And so it did play out well in that regard.
What you're saying is it's risky to play a game like this potentially, right? You know, if you're down a game or you're up a game or you're right there in the Big Ten, and all of a sudden this is such a hypothetical, so don't take it personally, Michigan fans. But like, say you have a 1-game lead or you're down a game and then you lose to Duke, you get beat up a little bit, then you lose to Illinois, you lose to Michigan State. You could see it being a narrative of, this is, why did you play this game? You only hurt yourself in the Big Ten race. None of that happened this year, but that's the point of like why it might be slightly risky,
Yeah, no, there's risk to it, but there's also upside, right? I mean, it's a classic risk reward scenario, and we just talked all about the upside, and they had already gotten, and I know we're going to pivot to Purdue now, they had already gotten so much work done this week. A top 7 road win at Mackey that you essentially lead wire to wire is an unbelievable thing to do. And so now maybe that's not like the immediate taste that Michigan fans have in their mouth right now, like probably a bit disappointed a win over Duke, that would have almost locked up the number 1 overall seed. You would have had to lose twice the rest of the way over the Final Four, and you would have only had 1 loss through 27 games. So, but I go back to that game at Purdue. In that first half, I was talking to someone in the program before this Duke game, and I was asking, because I guess maybe I was leading the witness a little bit. I was like, that felt like the best half you've played of basketball all year. And they were like, yeah, certainly since Vegas. And they were like, and then given the stakes, for sure, right? Like, that place, I can't overstate how wild that place was. You could not hear yourself think. The phrase I was using when I was talking about it with someone was, it was like a tuning fork. It was vibrating. It was unbelievable. And Michigan couldn't have been less phased. They were shooting it well. The ball was on the string. They cut off all of Purdue's water. They held Braden Smith scoreless in the first half. They were like, Trey Kaufman-Renn, you're going to need 26 shots to get 27 points. Like, we will take that all day and tomorrow, because not only is that barely more than 1 point per possession, but other guys you're not trying threes, right? Like, you're not, and there's not a ton of offensive rebounds that come off those little hooks in the lane. It was a masterful effort last Tuesday. And that's why Michigan is be able to say things like Dusty was saying today. Like I'm asking him about, this is year 2. You're right on the doorstep of locking up a Big Ten title tomorrow. He's like, yeah, we're they're not going to do any sort of post-game celebration because they don't want to share it. He's like, we don't think we will have accomplished anything with a share. They want this league outright. And why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't they feel that way?
Yeah, they have to remain focused on the task at hand. If you start celebrating a share, you're putting the cart. What's the phrase? The cart ahead of the boat.
Cart before the horse.
Cart before the yeah, whatever it is.
No, cart before the horse. The horse.
I thought there was some Barnes element in it. Whatever. You know what I mean.
The hay's not in the barn yet is another one.
That's the barn one I was thinking of. They're all cliches. I sound like a coach right now, botching cliches. But anyways, like it just goes to show you too, like how loaded college basketball is this year, because Michigan going to Purdue and winning that game in the fashion that they did, and then moving down 2 spots in the rankings is inconceivable in almost any other college basketball season. But yet, because they lost by 2 points to a Duke team who moves up, to number 1, we're all like, yeah, I guess it makes sense. Like who else is, what are you going to do? Duke beat Michigan. They have to move up. Arizona beat Houston. They have to move up. Because my point is that win at Purdue should have been something that was like unimpeachable. But yet this is such a loaded year for college basketball that it could be easy to forget, because Michigan looked focused. They looked dialed in. They were hitting shots, and that can be a little bit fickle, right? Where, they didn't hit shots against Duke, but they did hit against Purdue. I don't think that says anything necessarily about Michigan's shooting ability. When you launch a ton of threes, it can be in and, you can hit them one game, you cannot hit them the next game. But the fact that they did hit them at Purdue showed that they were mentally prepared. They were mentally tough. Their size bothered Purdue, I think, quite a bit. Michigan's certainly had a skill advantage in the front court in addition to a size advantage. So yeah, that's a bad matchup for Purdue, I think. But Michigan hammering them in the way that they did on the road after what happened last year, it's as impressive as a win as you can have in the Big Ten. And they already had the win at Michigan State too. And they'll get a chance to basically complete the trio of toughest venues when they play at Illinois in a couple days here.
Yeah. No doubt. And I guess just to the shooting point, I thought Michigan did get some cleaner looks against Purdue. Now, it's not always going to work out apples to apples. Largely things will skew that way. But, and that's, again, we have to give Duke credit in what they did to Michigan. Now, like I'll say, like Elliot Cadeau, right? Shooting 1 of 8. And finally he hit a 3 late in the game. And it was a big 3. It cut a 6-point game to a 3-point game. But he missed some shots that he normally doesn't, or that he's been 40% on this year. However, it felt like just about every 3 was just half a step further out than they're used to, right? And it's not that they can't.
Yeah, he took some bad shots.
It's not that they can't hit these shots, but they're just slightly harder. And then once, it can also be contagious both ways, right? Like as soon as the team is missing a bunch, you're aiming a little more than you are just letting it shoot. And Elliot, he told us after the Purdue game, especially, and this can work both ways, because Michigan wasn't getting a bunch of offensive rebounds or any hardly against Duke, and they were grabbing a ton against Purdue. Elliot was like, when that's happened, you can just fire at will, because it's like, even if I miss, we're going to just get this ball right back. And so there's way less thought about you're not aiming, you're just shooting. Like you want to be like unconsciously shooting, right? Like it's just any other moment. If you're thinking about what you're doing, then that's probably a little bit more, that's just more problematic, frankly. And so it worked both ways. Like it all worked hand in hand. The shooting, the rebounding, the length, the skill on defense, it all plays a part in creating the picture that you saw. But Michigan, frankly, if you're playing the preseason schedule game and you're going, all right, win, loss, win, like at Purdue is one that I always just throw the L on it, because it is so hard to win there. So in a way, that's kind of like winning too.
Yeah, it's like one of those where like if you do it every year for 10 years, you might get 8 or 10 out of those, or 8 or 9 out of those right, and you might get one wrong where you put the L down. It's not an easy place to win, so it's totally understandable why you did it that way. We have more Hail Yes coming up right after the break. I see Ken Fisher on Facebook has some questions about the refs. As a reminder to people, if you have questions for us, fire away in the comment section. We're taking questions. Circling back to Purdue here, Braden Smith is, everyone, I think he's probably still the favorite. Is he still the favorite to win Big Ten Player of the Year? I haven't looked at the odds recently, but among the top 2 to 3 players in the league is with Yaxel, Jeremy Fears, and Michigan bothered him quite a bit.
Keaton Wagler should be on that list too.
And Wagler too. Michigan did a good job slowing him down. He looked frustrated. Do you think that was something that Michigan did defensively, scheme-wise? Do you think it was a size issue with Mara in the paint and Johnson and Yaxel all, clogging things up? Or do you think it was just not Smith's best day.
I think, again, like Duke created Michigan's not best day, I think Michigan created Braden Smith's not best day, right? I mean, I remember, early Michigan started with a die on him, just switching a 1-5 ball screen. And I was like, what is going on? And Smith Smith blows by him on the first play of the game, and he blows a layup, right? If you don't think a 7'3" person like coming over the top of you is in your head, it is. And then Merez got a turn. Yaxel got a turn. Roddy was in his grill. Cadeau had a little bit of time on him. I mean, Michigan was throwing so many different bodies and looks on him that, he only took 4 shots in the first half. There wasn't a lot of room to operate. And then now he finishes with 20 points, right? And so you're never going to be like, oh, that's a bad game. They're all in the second half. You never got within 8 points, and 10 of them came from the free throw line, right? Like he went 4 of 13. That is a win that you'll take 7 days a week. And I guess the phrase is twice on Sunday, but they played on Tuesday. So twice on Tuesday. That is, I think Michigan did a fantastic job. I think they knew exactly what they were doing. And I thought Merez was going to get Kaufman more, but Michigan kept Yaxel on him quite a bit. And I felt it was so Merez could switch elsewhere and a die could lurk in the paint to make Braden Smith or anybody else who was trying to get in there think twice about coming in. But I missed it. What was the question? Was there a question about refs? Was it from that game, or is it not stream appropriate?
Yeah, it's stream appropriate. So Ken wanted to know about if we saw a play earlier in the game when Boozer inbounded the basketball and his foot was clearly on the line. He said that the refs ran to the Michigan starters to the bench in the first half with a lot of questionable calls. Certainly Michigan was in foul trouble. And the refs were not, I don't think, exceptional. And if you ultimately want to point to the refs from the Duke Michigan game, the call that was probably most 50-50 was the goaltending as far as swinging probabilities of the wins. But we already discussed that one too, of being like, when you watch that live, like blink test, I thought it was a goaltend. And you watch a million replays and you can convince yourself either way, one or the other. I don't think Michigan is going to be telling themselves that they lost for the refs, so I don't know if the fans should be thinking that as either, you know?
Yeah, and there were a couple. I mean, there's one play where Boozer he's rolling over to get a ball on the ground, and he slides a couple feet before he gets this pass off. I remember saying to someone in live time, I was like, was that a travel? That looks like a travel. I didn't see the one with his foot on the line. That happens. That one I will disregard unless it was at like the most critical juncture ever. But that happens all the time and is not called. And that doesn't make it right. That just is what it is. And there was the play late where Boozer, I think it was Merez, is going in for a layup. Boozer it looks like he gets him. And this was when he came back in with 4 fouls. That would have been his 5th foul. And play kind of stopped for a second and then picked back up. So, I understand. I think there are some gripes and some questionable calls. That said, you got to play better on the whole if you want to be able to point to those things, right? Like you can't be getting out rebounded. You can't be getting outscored in the paint 34-24. You can't be shooting 25% from 3. And all those things. And Duke was called for more fouls in the second half than Michigan was. So it's not, I don't think that Michigan lost this game because of the officials. Maybe there were a couple chances where things could have turned for the better. I get the frustration, but I'm with you. I think it's just, sometimes you got to play through it, right? And there are many days Michigan can play through it. And if they had, no one would be talking about it. It's only because you came up short.
Yep. And then we had another question from Steve who said, it's too bad that Michigan looked not very good to a large national audience who probably hasn't seen them play much this season. It's as frustrating as this can be as far as like bragging rights. I think Michigan has made plenty of statements. Those games in November out in Las Vegas, those get a lot of viewership. Because people are all at home, they're on vacation during Thanksgiving. People are looking for games to watch. Some of them were really late, so a lot of people saw that game. A lot of people watched a ton of people watched the Michigan State game, where Michigan was pretty clearly the better side in that one, won by double digits. And I haven't seen the numbers, but I'm guessing a lot of people watched the Purdue game too. Even though Tony and I discussed this, it's really bizarre that the Big Ten scheduled Michigan Purdue on a Tuesday and Michigan State Purdue on a Thursday. It's like from an audience viewership perspective, those you would think would be weekend games. But point being,
Peacock.
Michigan has, and on Peacock. Point being, Michigan has made a fantastic case for themselves nationally all year long. in the biggest, maybe most viewed game of the season, they didn't play their best. But end of the day, people know Michigan's a wagon, and national perspective, it's nice. It's good for bragging rights, but it's not going to impact their seed. So Steve, don't lose too much sleep about it, right?
Yeah. No, and I see what Steve is saying, right? Like, especially against the brand that is Duke, right? And
well, no fan base ever wants to lose to Duke, right? No, you never want to lose to Duke. So that too, I get that, right?
And Michigan's favored in this game, right? And so you feel like it's a chance to, like, you're no David, but to really slay the historical Goliath in this game. It felt like an awesome opportunity, and to not play your best, that's frustrating. But I don't know. I mean, I was on the plane for much of it, so I didn't get to see all of it, but I mean, I was watching game day as I'm loading in the airport and all these things. It felt like a behind the scenes Michigan show from what I saw. I mean, they were, all, and they deserve it, right? I mean, all the praise. And I mean, I guess that's when Michigan was doing its shoot around when I saw it, and Dusty came on the set and we had taken off, and I was on one of the smaller planes because it's going just to DC, even though it's Delta, no TVs. I was very bummed out about that, but just because couldn't finish watching it. But I mean, it was all Michigan, and like, talking up great. So the point is, like, nationally, I think the stage was set. The game didn't go the way you wanted, but Michigan got its flowers. It's in this type of game. Like, I mean, game day picked this game and not Arizona, Houston for its to make its home statement, right? Like, and that's not just because of Duke. That's because of both teams. And so too bad they didn't play better, but Michigan will have their day in the sun. A run is coming.
Since we circled back here to the Michigan Duke game after we kind of discussed Purdue, something that was trending online, a lot of people talking about it on social media, and you were in the room, so I wanted to ask you about it. After the game, Yaxel gets asked about playing against Cameron Boozer, who is going to be a top 3 pick in the draft. Wasn't the most efficient day early, but then kicked into gear late. He was kind of asked about how it was to play Cameron Boozer, and I mean, no other way to really say it. Awkwardly starts kind of laughing and almost can't really answer the question. And then that was getting compared to Boozer, who, is a true freshman. Yaxel's been in college basketball for a long time. He's asked about Yaxel, has nothing but compliments to say about him. So it was a moment that was getting clipped, but that can also not always offer the full perspective. So what did you make of it in the room? You heard both questions.
Yeah, I think it did. In this case, I think it did. I don't think it was really taken out of context or really a gotcha thing, which I do not like at all. I was a little bit surprised that, because Yaxel, and I've said it on this podcast, I don't know how many times, it's just about in through all of our interactions. And I mean, there have been tons throughout this year, right? Like both one-on-one. I mean, he sat down with me on the West Coast. I've talked to him before games, after games. He's always on the court early, signing jerseys, staying late, signing jerseys. Like, this is not just the kind of thing where you say, oh, this guy's humble, and he's not actually. He is actually extremely humble, like one of the most humble superstars I've met. And so that was surprising for me, for him to not just be able to say, like, yeah, like, he was really good. I think almost to a fault, and I've talked about this with other media members, because of where Yaxel came from, right? Like, he's at a JUCO in Arizona, then he's playing for UAB. He was not some star recruit in high school. This much attention and scrutiny has never been on him. Generally, by the time stars like of his stardom have this much attention in the college game, they've been used to it for a long time. He hasn't. And so he's not, like, we talk about other guys who are media trained, right? Like, you're not going to get an honest answer from them. They're just going to give you the cliche, and you can almost answer and say what they're going to say because you just know the way it goes. Yaxel's not like that. And I think this might have been one of the first times in that Purdue video that happened that surfaced last week, which was taken from over the summer. And I was talking with him on the court about that after Purdue, and he explained that. And I bought his argument or his sentiment from what happened there. And we can get into that if we need, but I don't want to detract too far. But the point is, he's almost honest to a fault, right? Like, he could not bring himself to say, like, something just complimentary, even if he didn't really think it. I'm sure he thinks Cameron Boozer is a great player, but if I had to guess, he's probably like, yeah, I mean, I've seen, like I have to go against Merez has to go against me. Like, we've seen really talented, big, tough dudes to defend. But I mean, I think Boozer's the national player of the year. It shouldn't have been that hard to compliment. So that was strange. I don't know that I have that much more on it than that, other than I don't think he's very well media trained. I don't think this makes him some villain. It was a weird response. And Merez, who's actually usually pretty shy and not one to speak up, really stepped in and saved the day there because he was turned into the SID, like Michigan Sports Information Director. He's got Dusty sitting right next to him. What do I say? What do I say? And it's like, it wasn't a trick question. So I thought the whole thing was just a little weird.
Yeah. And I think that pretty much, there's no grand thing we need to make out of it. Nathan in the comments says that him laughing about the Boozer question was completely disrespectful and Dusty looked embarrassed by it. It definitely came off disrespectful. Now, I think, like, gun to my head, like just reacting to it, I think that Yaxel was thinking in his head something along the lines of, look, I started the game 5 for 5. He probably thinks he's better than Boozer, right? So to get asked by that, and then maybe he's emotional after the game. That's kind of how I read into it. But still, it wasn't the appropriate reaction. And to put it in basketball terms, it was a missed layup. I mean, no one's going to give him a hard time for saying, hey, the National Player of the Year is a really good player. And he's, that's all you have to say. Yep, Cameron's a great player. Yada, yada, yada. Made some tough shots. And we've played a lot of great players, but Cameron is among the best of them. Boom, cut bait, you're done. No one's going to give him a hard time about that. And that's why I think it was kind of awkward and taken, on social media, because it was such a bunny and he missed it, right? So I think that's also an element of it.
That's very well said. I couldn't agree more. It made a highlight out of a nothing moment, and just gives more people more ammo to say more things. And so again, maybe he'll learn from it. I don't know. I'm just going to leave it there. I mean, I'll go to it. I don't know. Like, in some ways, Yaxel is very mature in the way he's handled. Like, he didn't come here to put up 25 and 10 and make sure he boosts his NBA stock, and he's not playing for himself, and he said a lot of the right things. But this is a laughy, jokey kind of guy. Like, I don't think you can understand just how much. Like, I'm thinking, if I want to give the example of what happened when I was sitting down with him and Merez and Adai, let's just say I used maybe the wrong phrase, right? That has it has other connotations if your mind was in the gutter sort of thing. And that's immediately where Yaxel went, right? Like, he's laughing. He's like, oh, pause. You know what I mean? And I'm like, all right.
Yeah, I was going to say pause.
Let's regroup. You know what I meant. And I'll just say it. So I was talking about their trio, and I was like, the threesome of you guys, blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, threesome. You know what I mean? Like, he's just a laughy kind of he likes to have fun.
Goofy.
He's a goofy dude. And so, I think sometimes he's not realizing hey, this is a pretty serious moment. And I'm not saying he can't do that on the court, but the off the court stuff. And it's never he gets in trouble. And I think he's largely a really great role model. And he talks about the importance of that, being where he's from, being how he was raised, and now the limelight that he's in. But this was an example of, he's just not polished. He's not polished.
All right, let's put a cap on that. Be done with it. Move on to quickly Minnesota. Looking forward to the last few weeks here. Minnesota, we don't have to spend that much time on it. I think it's most notable because if you're doing schedule math here, as we've discussed, Michigan can win a share of the Big Ten by beating Minnesota on Tuesday, can clinch the Big Ten outright by winning against Minnesota and Illinois, or winning against Minnesota and any of the other final 3 games. So Michigan should be able to clinch up a solo, Big Ten title, but it starts with Minnesota. And, this is a team that caught Michigan State off guard. Now that was on the road. And Michigan State played as bad as I've seen a Spartans team play in a long time. And Michigan's gonna be mad coming off a loss at Duke. I don't think this is going to be that competitive of a game, but I've said that before and we've seen that. So anything you're going to be watching in this one?
Yeah, just how seriously Michigan takes this one. But I think this is not. Michigan is just too good, and there is too much on the line, right? Say they had beat Duke. I think this would have been a little more trap spotty, right? You got Illinois later. You just beat Purdue and Duke, and you're feeling yourself. And maybe that's narrative based, but that's just sort of how I subscribe to things. Now it's all right, we just lost. We gotta get this thing clicking again. We gotta make sure that we know that we just play better. And this is a perfect spot. Plus, Minnesota has 5, maybe 6 rotational people right now, where Michigan, as we talked about, they've got their 9 deep. As long as there's no foul trouble, they'll have their normal rotations. I think this is a game where Michigan just overwhelms Minnesota from the beginning. I think it's Crocker Johnson, who is out and hurt, and he's one of their better players and a weapon from deep. It's Cade Tyson, and I don't know who else, right? Maybe Langston Reynolds is maybe their next best player. Chancey Wills, the former Detroit Kid player, he's still out, who is sort of going to be one of their primary ball handler, backup guard guys. And so they didn't have a deep roster. And now they're even more hurt. Now that said, Nico Medved, like Dusty May said a lot of complimentary things about him, about the scheme he runs and just the ferocity and the attention to detail on cuts and their activity and all these things. But there's X's and O's and there's Jimmies and Joes, right? And Michigan, if Jimmies are better, Michigan's got all the Jimmies, and Minnesota is straight Joes. So average Joe's gymnasium.
How dare you disrespect Joes like that? That's funny. No, I mean, you're not wrong. Michigan talent. I mean, this is kind of the point I've made. I've kind of like sarcastically made it, but like, how many players in the Big Ten would LJ Kaysen be the best player on their team? There's, I think Minnesota, would LJ Kaysen, given full volume and allowed to just cook, would he be the best player on Minnesota? I think he'd be certainly in the conversation, right?
Yeah. First or second. Cade Tyson is actually quite good. But I get your point. I mean, now that Oregon's hurt, right? Like Oregon, Rutgers, almost
Northwestern.
for sure. Northwestern, and Nick Martinelli's probably better than LJ Kaysen. But top two, I mean, a starting very functional rotational player who your scouting report would be built around in large part. I think that's the point. And probably like half the teams, at least a third of them. And so, I'm totally with you.
And he's the 6th, 7th, 8th, or 9th guy in some games for Michigan. So that just shows you how insane their depth is. I mean, Trey McKinney would be a starter on almost any other Big Ten team, I would say. So it's just like their team is loaded. Like, let's just call it what it is. Their team is loaded. They spent the money this offseason. They've gotten a awesome roster. And they've played to that roster. Bringing in the roster is half the battle. Maybe 50%, maybe higher, maybe less. Depends on how you philosophically look at it. But they have matched the two together, because you've seen at Kentucky, you've seen at some of these other big schools where you go out and get the huge roster via the transfer portal or the recruits or whatever it is, and it just doesn't always come together. And so far, Dusty's 2 for 2 in bringing it together. So we'll have much more coverage on Michigan basketball and this team that Dusty's put together. Be sure, if you're watching, we've got a lot of people tuning in today on the live, so that's awesome. Thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. Be sure to comment like Steve, Nate, and Ken all did. We love that. And then check us out on the podcast feeds as well, because I'm sure, I mean, I know I've watched these live things before, and I know that I come in and miss the first 10, 15 minutes, or miss the last 10, 15 minutes. So check us out on the podcast feeds as well, wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. So check us out there as well. And shout out to our acting sports editor, Ryan Ford, our editor of this podcast, Robin Chan, and the editor-in-chief at the Free Press, Nicole Avery Nichols, who make this all possible. So with that, appreciate it. Check us out at freep.com/sports. Tons more Michigan coverage. And we'll see you guys next week.